Jesper, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you after our last conversation. And
It's a
I should,
pleasure.
yeah, and I should probably mention that, well, I am in Cairo time. I'm in Cairo right now, last days here. And you are in Mexico, right?
I'm in Mexico, and that's why the hat is on. Otherwise, I can't see the screen, but I prefer to do interviews outside in the sun and
Yes.
get some sunshine.
Yeah, and we should, well, there's so much for us to talk about. And so first of all, let's mention, because you have, I don't know, 10 different hats, right? That you wear, and literally and figuratively, but it's we first met in Istanbul by chance encounter in a madrasa that I remember seeing. We were like painting and doing this like artworks, me and my wife, and then suddenly comes this family of this tall blonde people coming in to join us, and that's when I discovered that there is this very cool, interesting lifestyle for a family to actually be traveling and working and doing all sorts of different interesting things. So let's start. I don't even know where to start, but let's start with this. So you were full-time traveling for many years
Yes.
already, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we set off in July 2018. Before that, it was growing, but we were bound by having the expenses of having a house, of me having a full-time job I needed to attend. We weren't bound in a place by the kids going to school, as we had decided that our kids should be home educated. We actually were partly bound because we have four children, 12, 15, 18, and 24. And back then, we have decided we knew that our now grown-up daughter, she was in a relationship with a wonderful boy. They are still together, and we really love him. And it was not the right time to move between when she was 15 and 18. Even though we had the loss to start traveling, we as a family couldn't take her out of that life she led. That wouldn't have been fair. So if families out there considering, well, when is a good time to travel, when it's okay with your children. It is not an ego trip, this, for me and my wife. It's an agreement we have together with our children. If they at some time is like, now we just want to live in one place, we will see how we can make that happen. But our grown-up daughter was in a situation where she was finishing some education, and that spring, when we decided to take the step, she had moved in together with her boyfriend. So she have flown from the nest, and we had the option to say, okay, if we really want to do it, we should do it before our next in line becomes too involved in having a teen life in Copenhagen, where we lived. So he was 12 when we set off, and now it has been almost 6 years, and it has been really, yeah, it's like living. We have lived so many lives, so many experiences that I can't even recall how many cool things we have experienced. So we have been full-time traveling. We unschool our children, and we as a family earn our income online to make it possible. So that's our life.
Yeah, it's amazing. And this is something we did a whole episode of our other podcast that I do with my wife, the Artist Date, that we had a double date with you and your wife, and we talked a lot about
Yeah.
unschooling. So I will point people to that. But maybe for people just to understand that this is like I would say, because we talked about this, it's an old idea and it's a new idea at the same time, not to
Yeah.
be bound by a country and not to be bound by, let's say, formal education that you have to go to a school. So basically, can you talk just to touch a little bit on the unschooling and how that works?
Yeah, very simple. People kind of have started to look on childhood as a magical place where learning only take place in a school setting. And that is kind of weird. And they are now even stretching it down. So you also try to do some school thing in the kindergarten, and that's also weird. But when you are grown up, you accept that you can learn anytime as a person. If you're passionate about something or just want to learn something, you just sit down and learn it. But for some reason, we have spun this weird idea that children can only be learn stuff in a setting that is a school, and if they someone else have decided what they should learn. If you ask yourself if you would like to learn on that in that sense, if anybody came to me and said, hey, do you want to learn this curriculum I have decided? If I said yes, the children don't say yes, it's their parents who say yes. If I said yes, they would then say to me, oh, but you need to do it over here. By the way, you're not allowed to go to the toilet and pee whenever you want to. You're not allowed to eat anything when you want to. And we decide what you should learn when you should learn it. Are you still up for the deal? I do not know any adults who would say yes to that deal. So it's kind of weird that when we look at children, I'm like, oh, but that's how children learn. It's like it's for me. It's just like, come on, there's something wrong with your way of seeing the world. Learning is something we do because it's fun. Learning is something we do because we actually want to use what we learn for something, or just because it's fun to learn. So that is the basic of unschooling, which is a kind of negative term because it defines itself as not something. There's a newer firm that is starting to grow, which is self-directed learning, which I like a lot more. But unschooling is the one that has been around since the 70s. So that is what we call it when we just briefly talk about it. But being a self-directed learner is basically you saying, oh, this life is quite cool. I like it. Then you hang out, and when there's something you want to learn, you learn it. It's just like being respected and like an adult. I mean, all the stuff you've learned recently, the last 10 years, I bet it was because you wanted.
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was
So
even
that's
thinking.
it. That's the most simple way I can put it. It's schooling is a placeholder. It is something we have created so that parents can do something else in their time. It is not the optimal way of learning. It is forced. Someone else have decided the curriculum, and it is not the optimal way of learning. And it's also set in a way where you're like, oh, we have them here for 10 years. So now we spread out the knowledge over this set of time of their life. But you know what? It's okay to just be a child until you don't want to, until you get curious about stuff. We have seen it with our kids. They're just hanging out, enjoying their life. And then something happens after teen sets in. And when teenager is like a weird period to go through. But then when you get like 14, 15, your brain starts to get hungry in another way. Right now, I and my 18-year-old, he's like, "Oh, I really want to understand this math properly." So he's taking what is equivalent of a high-level math, and he's reading up everything about math you would have learned in school during 10 years. He took that inside 1 or 2 months, and now he's on the high level studying stuff I don't even remember because for me, I was forced to it. I, it, there was no kindling of the fire inside me. And that is what giving people time to be human and supporting them when they want to learn stuff is really good at.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said about like forgetting things in school, like all the stuff we learn, and that there is no reason aside from like learning a test. I remember being interested in science in school. basically killed it because it was like, this is a vector, this is this, and that took me out. And it was stuff that I started finding interesting after, like in a book or like a TV show, like a documentary, and then suddenly you got interested in it. And I think that's a good segue to, and also you guys have like you guys started a podcast where you actually talk to other people that you talk a
Yes.
lot about education and that kind of
A lot about this. If people want to listen, then we have more than 60 episodes out on living a self-directed life. We call the podcast Self-Directed. It's on all the major platforms. It's weekly. There's a lot about unschooling because we believe that to live a self-directed life, it's good to start with setting the children free so they don't need to find their own feet as grown-ups, but find them as young people and be able to find the direction. But then we also go in other directions, talking with people who are spiritual leaders and all that. It's about living a self-directed life, basically. How can you live your life if you take responsibility for your own life and don't outsource how life should be to other people?
Yeah, and I guess then one interesting segue, even for people to know this, because something that, as this podcast is about people that inspired me, you, when I met you, and then I was like, oh, I didn't know this was possible, because my wife and I were considering coming back to Canada, where we were residents, and even pay taxes there and everything. And then you mentioned the idea, oh, there's this thing about flag theory and how to live like as a perpetual traveler, or at least not to be bound to a place. And when I
Yeah.
started looking into it, it was like a mind-blowing. Unless you need to be bound to a place to do a specific work, there is no reason to just be in a place just because you happen to be born in it.
No, it is again a shift of mindset where you need to ask yourself, if I had the options, where would I like to be? I'm from Denmark, so when we're recording this, it's in the end of January. Denmark is not the most fun place to be in the end of January, so I'm in Mexico. I visit family and friends in Denmark in the summer because Denmark is beautiful in the summer. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, and it's a very green and lush place with a lot of vibration. And Copenhagen is a cozy, wonderful city. So if you get past the question of if you say yes to why not be where I can be, then people start with the next normal, but I can never afford that. I have yet to meet people who can't afford it. It's a question about when you can afford it. And it's sometimes a question about making a plan to reach that point in your life. We had the dream, like so many other people have had a dream about, oh, it could be cool if we traveled more. Me and my wife have now been together for 20 years, full-time traveling for 6. But it didn't start out like that. It was we had 14 years where it was just a dream. Then we saw that we could stop being bound to a place by choosing not to have kids in a school. Because let me take that one first, is if you decide to become a family and have kids, then you, in the normal mindset, it's like, oh, they need to go to a school. That's 10 years. Let's say there's 3 years in between your kids. So then it's 16 years you should live in the area of that school you put your kids. Let's say you have more than 3 years in between the kids, then it can go up to 20 years of your life is determined by where you put your kids to school. Then you choose a house that is near, or the school that is near the house. Then you choose a job that is logistically inside that realm. So if you start by pulling the plug on the school system, then you can start looking at, can we make it happen economically for only one income? If you can that and have started breeding, it took us 4 years to breed properly. Like, okay, we can actually do it from one income. We learned how to do it. then it begins to be weird to have one parent going to an office every day to pay for a house in Copenhagen, and you're like, why are you there? But what we did in that period in our life was, as we weren't bound by school, then a lot of my colleagues were happy that I didn't take summer vacation break. I only took 1 week or something. In Denmark, we have like crazy amount of holiday. We have 6 weeks of holidays per year, and you can even get some extra. So I ended up with 7, 8 weeks. So we moved them around so that we traveled out of season because we weren't bound by the kids should be in school, and we as parents only could travel outside inside school holidays. Imagine what goes on in the marketeer or sales world of a plane company. Oh, now it's school holidays. Should we lower the prices or increase the prices? It's not difficult. And it's the same with the hotels. I mean, traveling outside of season, you can get a month for what you pay for a week. So that's again, when people look at the life we are living and is comparing that and with their latest holiday, and they're like, it will never be possible. Then it's because you compare being full-time traveler with being on vacation. It is not, and it will never be the same. There's such a big difference economically on how you spend, how you travel. I know you, for example, are 2 months in Cairo. When you are 2 months a place, you get to be able to immerse yourself in the culture, learn it. It's something different than just like skipping around, being on holiday in Cairo for a week, and you get some experience, taste some spicy food, and then you go home. Here you actually go to the local market. You get into a kind of relationship with the guy who sells you spices. You have talked with him multiple times. You get the feeling, the sense, the smell, everything. And everything becomes cheaper. Housing becomes cheaper. If you're at the local market and know the person you're buying from and they see you more than one time, cheaper than when they are like, oh, it's a tourist, let me double the prices. Everything becomes cheaper. So it's not, we cannot say the economic I had living in a house in Copenhagen, I can live for way less as a full-time traveler. And then the fun part is, there's a lot of high seasons where high season for Spain is in the July and stuff because you are guaranteed the sunshine. I do not like Spain in July. There's too many people and it's too damn hot. I mean, it's not fun, not for a month. Maybe a week you go down, you just burn out on the beach and you drink some whatever and you go home and oh, I got so much sun. It is not a life. It is a holiday. So what we have created in our life is what we have created a life we do not want a vacation from. And the fun part about that word is vacation comes from to vacate. Imagine you have created a life you want to vacate, you want to get away from. Is that the life you should live? I say no. So
Right.
just to take the economy part of it, then there is so many different ways that you can knit it together, and there's experts out there about taxation. Some countries have what they call e-citizenships, where they want to give people an option to become a digital nomad, and some countries have you need to be in this country 3 years, but then you can travel for 9. There's so many options that people should look in for to it themselves. And one of the places is a website called denationalize.me, denationalize.me. People can check that out. It takes time to figure everything out, but what really people should start with is asking themselves, do I want to be full-time traveling? It's not something everybody wants. For example, some countries have a rule that if you are in that country for more than 6 months, you need to become a resident of that country. So you need, there's so many rules and stuff, and that's why I'm like, outsource it or use the time. It's not something we can cover in a quick call
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's what I did. Like I actually would vouch for that company because I did a consultation with them, and they provide with like a lot of like ebooks and materials, and they tell you like depending on what kind of work you do, like what kind of thing can be done. But it's more like the idea that oh, this is something that is possible. And what's unique about your situation is that you were traveling. You have 4 kids, and you're traveling with 3, and for a long
Yeah,
time.
and
It's not like
sometimes 5,
yeah,
because we also invite our daughter and her and her boyfriend. So
right.
this month, these 6, we have now been together with them since sometimes in December. So it's 2 months with 7 people and 2 dogs. So it is possible.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the main things that is interesting about like your story. So I guess one other thing we should mention that like the idea of learning as you do projects too is something that I remember we talked about this before because I
Yeah.
remember seeing that first of all you wrote I don't know how many like children's books. It's like in the
Yeah, no,
dozens.
I've written something 18, 19, 20 books for the beginner reader. But I'm absolutely not an author. It's for me, it was fun. And I know some people are like, I want to be an author, and I'm like artist and stuff. I'm not an artist in that sense. I really just love making projects, and one of the reason I love making projects is you can say it's in this self-directed, unschooled realm of life. But I've been doing it since I was very young. I started when I was 16 or 15. I started. I was like, oh, I want to try to create a amateur feature film, and I took all the steps needed and learned to do that. After that, it was I made a music video and figured out how to do that. Then I made an animated movie and figured out to do that. And when I look back, when I was young and was in that process, I was a little confused about why didn't I make 2 animations movies, and why didn't I make more than 1 movie. And but today I have learned about myself. It is because once I know how to do it, then I want to learn something new. So, um, and so what I really do is I learn through projects. Right now, me and my wife are developing a course on how to get harmony in your personal finances, because people often, and we have done that ourselves, you has this, oh, to become happy economically I need to become rich, which is actually not necessarily what you need to become. You need to figure out what your values are. You need to figure out what is important to you in your life, and then you need to figure out how does that look economically. Most of the things that makes me really happy in my life is not something that costs money. And and it's like it's walking in nature, seeing a waterfall, it's seeing the full moon. It's about being together with people. So what it basically gives me pleasure is to have time. And you can have time in different ways. You can have time by not needing so many money, so you don't need to work so much. That frees up a lot of time. You can get more time by studying your own habits. How many hours do I watch Netflix per evening and stuff like that? Or what do I actually use my time on when I say I'm working? How much Facebook am I on, and etc. So, so a course that was started out as being about harmony in personal finances have ended up becoming a wonderful mix of philosophy, psychology, and then the boring, it's not really boring, but the boring stuff of, do you know your budget? Do you know how you spend money? What are the personas you are inside you when you use money? How do you use money? Why do you use them the way you do? Do you actually have 90% clearness on how you use your money? So we created that project because money always have fascinated us. And we created it also because we wanted to become better to it ourselves. So that's the learning journey. And I created it also because I have a fascination about how people learn. So I create a course, then I'm studying, okay, what do people need to take in this knowledge? They need some new knowledge somehow. They need to question where they are in their life, question the status quo, why am I doing what I'm doing. They need to take the new knowledge and take a reflection on in their life. Then they need to make some exercises to anchor the knowledge inside of them. And then the most important step is, how do you internalize the new knowledge? So this I find interesting. So I find mastering this process of helping people to learn very interesting. So we will do a couple of courses on stuff that interests us and we find interesting enough to use a lot of time on. But part of it is me learning about how can I best serve people so the knowledge they are purchasing through my course actually will stick, actually will make a difference, actually will happen for them. And it is kind of the same as when I wrote the children books, because there I wrote a book, but I studied what is a book? How does a book work? How do beginner readers work? So if we take that example, then when you're a beginner reader, the kind of books I wrote were surplus books, you can call them, like you have learned something in school and now you have some extra time. Then the teacher is saying, now you can go find a book. It's for the early beginner reader. And it means that the book, if you're going to give the child a good experience, they should be able to go home to their mom and dad and say, Mom and Dad, I read a book today. That sets a frame on how long the book can be. So you need to write something that can be read and understood inside 45 minutes for a beginner reader. That is around 15 pages only. It's like small books. So 20 books sounds a lot, but it's 15 pages. Then in a book for a beginner reader, you have the text, but you also have the illustration. And then you need to know that you cannot have two time skips on one page. So you have one scene, can you say? And that's what then I plucked from my old making movies knowledge. So you have one time frame you are writing about. You are not on one page writing about yesterday, today, or before, now, and after. You're writing in nows because it's easier to read for them. And the illustration should not be before or after what you're reading. It should be now as well. These are ways to help the beginner reader who is reading something that can then look at the picture and see, oh, this is what it means. So it's supported in the reading. Then another, for me, fascinating thing is, how can you make a cliffhanger in a book that is only 15 pages? Then you need to understand how a book is read. You have like the left page, you have the right page. Often I put the pictures on the right page. You read something, and if you want to give a really good quick cliffhanger, you end on the left page in the bottom, and then, but could he master it or whatever? Then you need to turn the page to get the cliffhanger. It will give you time in your imagination to consider what would have happened. I find stuff like that weirdly fascinating. And that is what I really enjoyed about writing the books. Then the art of writing for a beginner reader is another art. You need to understand what is the level of knowledge they have, which kind of difficult words can they read. In Danish, it's called, the best explanation of it is, the easiest way to learn to read is when the word sounds like it is written. But in Danish, we have like, sometimes a word is spelled in one way, and if you read it like it says, you should know that O here is pronounced in another way. And so you need to know these words that is good for the beginner readers. Again, super fascinating for me. So that is why I make projects. I make projects to learn and grow as a person, and because it's everything, if you go down deep into it, is really fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
Amen
deeper
to
you can
that.
go, it's just fun, man.
Yeah, and this project is the Luconomy, I think, the one that you said about
It's called
money management.
Luconomy. Yeah, it's combined of Lu from Chinese, because to have some old wisdom and to take the philosophy, and economy. So it's called economy.com, and it is an online course. And sometimes we give a talk on how we look at money. It is not about how can you become a full-time traveler, because before you can become a full-time traveler, you need to know how to handle your personal finances. You need to know your spending habits. You need to know which kind of budget you can and will and are prepared to live on, so you know you can scale up or down. So it's again really fascinating to look into, and also a wonderful learning process for me and my wife, where we're like, ooh, this thing we always go and say, are we actually doing it ourselves? Ouch. Okay, let's take our own medicine here. So we become more wealthy, because rich is a weird definition, and wealth can be time also.
Mhm.
We are so lucky that freedom is our overall arch of what we measure thing up against. So can we be free, live together as a family, experience together, then we feel as the most rich people in the world.
Yeah,
Then you can say, go to tasks that is not fun, you value your time, and I measure everything up against, will it hinder my overall goal? And it do you well to spill a little from the course, then it's about when you get clear on your values on that level, every time you stand and about to spend some money, you should have in the back of your mind, will this bring me further away or closer to my personal goal? And
mhm.
often that bag of chips, that half bottle of red wine, that whatever, is not what people actually dream of, but they
Yeah,
use their money on it.
yeah,
And
no,
then I'm saying, hey, I'm sitting in Mexico. I'm happy.
yeah. That's an interesting. I don't know if you had this experience with your friends that say now are most of our friends, I assume for you is the same. They are actually living in one place, right? They're not like
Yeah,
travelers like ourselves. But one thing that I noticed is that some friends of mine since high school, when they get really stuck on a boring job or with a very problematic, let's say, I don't know, wife or husband or something,
yeah,
um, they start doing these projects around the house. I'm going to renovate this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like, and it's like you're trapped. And I know, like, because I know those people since high school. It's like, but you were so
yeah.
much into this
I've
subject and
thought a
that
lot
subject.
about, yeah, I've thought a lot about that, because I also can have a tendency to create projects, and it is about creating meaning in life. Life, if you life is a funny thing. We have a lot of time, and if you don't find meaning in your work, then you need to create it somewhere else. Otherwise, you will get depressed. So it's a very healthy response they have, that they create meaning in and around where they are. I find actually that very healthy.
Mm.
If they were clear on their values, maybe they would have chose to create different projects or work towards a future where they could live those values more fully. But in and of itself, if you are in a boring job, and when I were in a full-time job, I did a lot of
Mm.
trimming around the small where the flowers were in my garden and stuff like that, because I needed to make meaning. I
Mhm.
needed to, and it was like, this needs to look like this. When it looks like this, I have done a good job, then I am happy. So it's
Uh-huh.
these self-proclaimed, what's the word? It's you give yourself the present of you have been a good boy, somehow. You have done good. You
Yeah.
give yourself gratitude, and you define what gives you gratitude, and sometimes it's garden, but it probably, I don't know if gardening is the top one passion for people, or if it's where they find an area they could make meaning. um
Yeah, and
and
it's
some
therapeutic
just,
for sure. Yeah, that's an
yeah,
interesting
it
way.
is.
Yeah. And speaking of like side projects, because one other project that you did recently that is very cool is your AI art. And like, let's say
Yeah,
it's very cool that you have AI art. Then you talk a bit about that, but it also has an element of sculpture, the idea of getting back to the
yeah,
world. So talk a little bit about your AI art because that's really cool.
yeah. I call it Conrad plus AI, and you can find it at Conrad plus plus AI.com. And the overall goal for me, so it's again twofold. There's the learning part. If I do not have fun, then it's kind of difficult for me to learn. That's how I'm knitted together. So the Conrad plus AI project is me wanting to learn a lot more about AI. But then the fun part of it is creating an art project out of it, because I have a lot of stuff inside my head where I do not have the patience to become, yet it might come a day, I do not have the patience to become a really good sculptor. I do not have the patience to become a really good painter, or to sketch something with my hands. But the ideas I have, most people can visualize in their head and have ideas. So together with AI, the first part of the Conrad plus AI project is it's visual art of real artworks I would like to see in the real world, and one of them is called railings, and it is because it is stuff I really would love to see in my life. For example, walking next to a river that is fenced off, or there's a railing next to a river, and it could be in London or whatever, and in Copenhagen. In my mind, I could see the top of the railing be turned into a guy surfing waves. So it's a meta where you morph the actual railing, and then you morph it into something else, and then you morph it back. And it looks really cool. I
Yeah.
like the projects I've made. People should go see it. And that idea, I would love to see someone help me create it in real life, but I cannot do it. I don't know how to weld, but the idea is there. Then AI is a little annoying because I've debated so much with DAL-E about not putting mist. It needs to be able to create it out of real metal, but it made some mist on the surfway. I'm just like, fuck it. In the end, I gave up.
Yeah.
So whatever people see is not what I have in my mind. It should be able to be made out of real metal. Um, and so that's an illustration. Then I also have this idea about a boat and then that should be set in a harbor, a railing next to a harbor. Then you have a railing, and suddenly there's a small boat on it. And I have a sculpture of a ballet dancer in the middle of a major city on a railing, and I just love that picture. But it's a dialogue, and that's why I don't call myself an artist, but called the art project Conrad plus AI, because it is my ideas, but then visualized by AI. So what is produced, it's not exactly what I had in my head, and that is part of the interesting joy of working with it, learning how can you make a good prompt. And then I turn all the knowledge I get into work for the clients I have, so I can help my clients, my marketing clients, to actually go and use it properly. Because, but just if I had sat down and said, now I want to learn AI because I want to be able to help my clients with AI, I would have been bored as hell. I also use it a lot for our podcast because I find it really fascinating. What can you do, and how can it help assist so people can do what people do best, which is use our mind. Um, yeah, I also have one called Breaking Free, a
Hmm.
sculpture series, which is real sculptures about breaking free. And there are some wonderful ones there as well that people can take a look at.
Yeah.
And I have this, it will come, I will soon finish it, but one where I imagine like every country has like this animal is the symbol of our country. And then together with DALL-E, which is ChatGPT's AI that creates graphic, I have created the animal as fat and no as obese as the percentage of the people in that country are. So you can see, for example, a very fat American eagle, which is really fun because there's something fun about that I have too much. I have weighed like almost 26 pounds more than I do now. So I'm not after people and know how hard it is to get rid of it and all that. But we seldom see animals let themselves go fat. And there's something fun about seeing fat animals. And then there's something fun about seeing the representative of the country's spirit in an animal fat. I laugh when I see those pictures.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I'm looking forward to seeing that because I've seen your other work, and yeah, like I'm sort of working with AI stuff too, more from a practical point of view, like from transcribe a text, please do a
Yeah,
summary, and it does better than I could.
yeah.
It just
It's
is.
a wonderful way to save time. I use it to edit videos for our podcast. There's one called Opus Clips that make wonderful summary. It makes snippets and reels. It just makes me more productive. And instead of people being afraid of losing their jobs, learn the tools and help more people.
Yes,
It's
that's
best.
yeah, and maybe about this, like about helping more people. I think that's a good segue to this idea because you mentioned that you work with many years. You worked in marketing in Denmark, and then
Yeah.
and they can talk a little bit about your
Yeah, then I
marketing
tried
journey.
then I mean I've been in the online world for 25 years now where I've worked with I started as a editor of a youth magazine and ended up in the more commercial world, and then my wife got sick and almost died of cancer in 2010, which is a big shock in life, and she's luckily still here. But you get to look at your values when stuff like that happens. So I moved away from the commercial world and have decided to only use my time on projects I feel make the world a better place. So I help a lot of NGOs with their marketing, not-for-profit organizations, because can you say, have mastered my skill on the evil side. I've learned the tools and the tricks of the more salesy marketing world, but now use them in the presence of good. And a lot of these non-for-profit, they are a little afraid of marketing and thinking about selling. But what you're selling, if you are non-for-profit, is either you're asking for donation or you are asking for people's time where they can volunteer. You are still selling something. So you can use the same methods. So I help a lot of NGOs with that. If anybody listening have an NGO, then I give like a free discovery call where I talk with them about how I think that what I know can help them. But then the other group of people I help is people who wants to be free. It is people who are on the edge of taking a step out into going outside the box, the 9 to 5 work. They can still be there, but some people call it a side hustle. You start up something on the side, or maybe you are a yoga teacher once a week and you wanted to grow, or you're a psychotherapist, or you're a mentor, or if you in any way work with helping people. And I agree with that, and often I do, because people who work with helping people have the same way of looking at life that I has. A lot of those are like one-man armies, and they should do what they're really good at. And often building a website or doing marketing is not one of them. But I've seen so often that if you ask a marketeer like myself, oh man, I need help to this, can you help me with a Facebook ad? Then I will try to earn as many money on you as possible, because you're only there for a short time. If you ask me to build a website, then people will often give a high price for a website. But what I've come to the revelation is that more fun for me and way more economically for the people I work together with is what I call monthly marketing mentoring, because people can do more themselves. They're just afraid of this. and all the knowledge I have put inside this brain about marketing for 25 years, it is way more expensive to pay me to do it for you than to pay me to mentor you once a week. No, the minimum I go down to is 2 times a month. I believe people need time to actually have time to do the task we agree on, because I believe in the startup phase, until you have grown your side hustle into a full-time job and you're rich enough to hire a marketing manager, you're doing most of the stuff yourself. But you're also doing stuff you don't know. That's where I found this niche of going in and being an expert in online marketing, newsletters, everything. So what I do is I talk together with people about, so basically first you start out by figuring out which kind of channels that people have they can speak through. One of them is maybe social media. One of them is a newsletter. One of them is word of mouth. Then we analyze, where do your current clientele come from? Then we go down that path, understanding how they have built their business until now. Then we evaluate which channels gave what. And then we start with all the knowledge I have to hone and make that channel better. And when that one is up and running, we go to the other channels. It is really just supporting people in growing their business. And it is super fun for me because I get to be part of their success in the way, or they earned the goal, but I can be on the side, and if I see people succeed, I get proud, Pedro. I get really proud. It is like, as a young couple, I helped them grow their business in the fall, and I'm like, woo! They are free now, and they can actually live a life. They can they have created a business they can do from anywhere, and it just makes me so proud to give people the option to not need to live in one place, or at least don't have a boss. Some people are most happy next to their network, their friends, their family. All respect to that. But if you can free yourself and give yourself time so you don't need to be in a certain place all the time. And to people out there, there's a Danish book called Soda Work. If you can find it, read it. And because it goes into how much of office work is what they call soda work, work you do to fill out the 37 or 40 hours a week, because that's what you're paid for. I have been on an office for 22 years of my time, or more, actually. No, 20 years, I believe. Yeah. So going to an office every day for 20 years, I know that I've never actually needed to use more than around 4 hours to do the actual job. The rest of it was filling time, talking with colleagues, having meetings about having meetings, drinking coffee, chatting, watching Facebook, whatever, watching trailers. Hey, come and see this cool thing I found on the internet. I have yet to see a full-time job actually fill more than 4 hours. And I would rather give people those 4 hours than go spend them in nature with their friends, their family. It's more fun.
Yeah, and also spend time with kids, because for people that have families, sometimes they basically use school as daycare, and then they spend all that time in the office, like sometimes, as you said, like not being necessarily productive just because they have to be there, and then beating themselves up because they're at home just, I don't know,
Yeah,
watching Netflix and
and
stuff.
there is a fun question we often get about unschooling, homeschooling, having our kids at home, which is where people say, oh, I'm not sure I could stand being together with my children for 24 hours a day. And the thing is, I understand them, but there's a big difference between the child you get home from who have been away from 8 to 10 hours a day, together with up to 28 people, or maybe even in the schoolyard, thousands or hundreds. So all those impressions they get during a day, all those stress of all those social interactions, which is way more than any normal people would want to have in their life. All those things produces a stressed out child that needs to react, that needs to reconnect with the parent who themselves have been away for a whole day and have stress when they come from home, from work, maybe stuff is going on, you talk with a colleague, you got a nasty email, whatever is going on. This stress disappears when you live together. So it's cannot be mirrored. The life you live when you have a full-time work and kids full-time away is not the same life as when you live together. It's way more chill, way more,
And that's
because
one.
we are relaxed.
And that's one of those things that I think. So on your day to day, you work like the kids have like I assume there's a specific time of the day that you work, and then other times you are with family and stuff.
For me, I work right now. I've said yes to a set amount of hours for a client I really love in Denmark, a big NGO. Uh, so and they are in Denmark and I'm in Mexico, so I have meetings from 5 to 7 in the morning.
Hmm.
It's not something I would do long term, but I do it a couple of months because it is me who decided to be in Mexico, not them. And is it worth my freedom? I bet it is. It is. It is.
Hmm.
It is worth that I work from like 5 to 9 in the morning, and then the rest of the day I chill, then I take a nap, and then I go early to bed, and I have a wonderful day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's good to wake up early too. So.
Yeah, and but sometimes the kids want to watch a movie in the evening. I don't want it. Then I sit down and work there. So I have 24 hours available. Nobody besides myself and my wife and our kids are deciding when I need to do stuff. So
Mhm.
so I'm very free in organizing my own time. I like to mix it as a yeah. I like stopping after lunch, for example,
Mhm.
because then the sun is shining and it's good to take a walk in nature.
Yeah, it's
But that's again the freedom aspect. It's more important for me to have the time than to have a bank account that is crazy. But
yeah,
it's
and
values again. Start with the values.
yeah, and the whole thing with the bank account is one of those things that okay, you start accruing money in a specific like area or place, but then you're bound to that place and that time, and you have to go there and you have to do this.
Yeah.
So you create success on the monetary sense, but then all the other stuff is not necessarily aligned, as you said
It's
about
it,
values. Yeah.
and it's on the cost of your freedom. And some people first want their freedom when they're 69 and ready to retire themselves. I like to have my freedom now together with my kids when they're young,
Yeah.
and while I still find it fun.
Yeah,
I've
and
seen many people retire not living the life they dreamt about.
yeah, and with you and the kids, because I know that last year you guys went to like 11 countries or something. You actually traveled quite a bunch.
Oh, crazy amount of countries, too much. We had just gotten so we bought we started our travels in a big red bus, very picturesque, very beautiful, and we thought you needed a whole house to travel around with. We only drove 3,000 kilometers and ended to have it on a place as a tiny house for some years, and it was wonderful. But you don't drive to the beach in a big red bus that is 11 ton, and it's like for every liter of diesel we could drive less than 5 kilometers. It's like
Oh,
two
wow.
miles or 3 miles or something, you know. So it's also quite expensive to drive in. So we got a smaller car, but then the kids grow, and then we invested in a 7 meters Mercedes Sprinter that we got rebuilt. My wife said to me, "You are better at earning money than building. I will not live in something you have built." She have tried that. And she's right in both things. I'm better at earning money than building. And I mean, get a carpenter if you can't do it. If you have the time to learn it, do it. But these works on a keyboard, not building. Um, so we had just gotten our Mercedes Sprinter, and we just wanted to go out and van living. So we toured Europe crazy for around 1.5 years. And we weren't stressed out, but we were like, okay, now we need to slow down. Um, So I was about to say we had slowed down, but it first really starts now. We have been in Mexico since October, but we have been 6 or 7 places in Mexico. This is the first time it's like 6 weeks in one place, and it's really wonderful. Then we will start doing month to month. And I think we are kind of after 6 years exploring what is the perfect mix for us. And I believe it will be something like 2 or 3 months to immerse ourselves somewhere, understand culture, meet people, grow a network we want to go back to, exploring maximum a month, and then again deep diving, because it is fun to see a lot of cities, and it was absolutely worth it. But the faster you travel, the more expensive it is. The faster you travel, the less you understand the culture, and the less friends you make. And both we travel for the people mostly now.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's exactly what we were like thinking when we came to Egypt, and then suddenly it's 9 months here, but
Yeah,
soon Thailand and the other places. But this is interesting to see. That's one parallel that I think not only for people to see that there are dads that work online and they have like a full career and fun, and they have time with their kids, which is something that it's a blessing. It's like
it
you
is. It
get
is.
the experience of watching them grow, and also it's like they're not in their bedroom just sitting there like on with video
Oh,
games
you
and
live you live
iPads.
near each other, and it's
Yeah,
also the amount. I made a fun math one day calculation where I asked myself, how much time do a normal married couple get to spend with each other? And then you can ask how many quality hours per day. But let's just say, just quickly. Um, so you wake up, you go to work, maybe you have maximum 1 hour in the morning where you're together, but it's kind of stressful time. Then you come home, you commute to work, you commute back. So let's say at least 9 hours, if not more, has passed. Then if you're a family, you need to cook and make food and stuff, and sometimes it needs to be in rush and you need to help the kids. But let's just say you have, let's just say that 10 hours of your day is commuting and working, 8 hours is sleeping, then we are on 18. Then there's 6 hours left. Okay, so I have doubled that together with my wife because we work from home. If I'm not together with her, I often sit and work in the same room as her and feel her presence. So I kind of feel that I have been so lucky, instead of being married for 20 years, that I've been together with her for 40s. If you look at the amount of hours I have, it first started later, so I can, it's since I became full-time at home, of course, only the last 5 years. But those last 5 years have been worth more than 10 years of marriage. If we look at the amount of hours we get together with the one I've decided to share my life with, and then the kids, which I've decided to share my life with as first. But imagine loving someone and being able to double the amount of hours you have together with them. That is quite awesome.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. That actually reminds me of like the last thing that I wanted to mention with you, which is you have a foundation about fatherhood that you like share
Yeah,
things with
it
like
is. It is
for
called Better Dad Institute, and betterdadinstitute.com. And the reason for it is actually looking back at, now I've been a dad for 20 years. My wife had our 24-year-old. I met her when she was 5. And not my wife, but my daughter. And
yes.
I got to adopt her. And we have, so she's the one I've been father for the longest. She's the child I have been there for the longest time. And it's really wonderful to be her father. Um, but when I look back at how shitty a dad I was 20 years ago, compared to how much I've learned being a dad for 20 years, then it is a waste of knowledge not to pass it on. And when I look at how my dad, who is a wonderful man, and I have a great father and I love him and all that, but there wasn't a tradition of that generation of dads to share with their sons or their daughters. My dad have not taught me a lot or shared a lot of how it was to be a father. He have never shared how it was to change diapers. I mean, that's just a diaper. How it is to have a wife that is breastfeeding. All these things that dads get to experience alone and need to learn by mistakes. I made many mistakes, man. And one of them is learning to control your temperament and anger, and to learning that children are not annoying, and a baby is not annoying because it cries. It is trying to tell you something, but it doesn't have a language for it. And there's just a huge amount of knowledge that there's a tradition for that. There's written like heaps amount of books for women about this subject, very few amount of books for dads. So we have created the Better Dad Institute, and we are doing dad circles and one-on-one talks. And the goal is actually just to, as it is in the title, hey man, can we teach you to become a better dad? I know I'm a better dad than I was. I will still become a better father during the next couple of years. But I know I was shitty in many levels. I was not the most shitty dad in the world, absolutely not. But I can see where I have improved. I can see the knowledge I've gained. And if people want to know more about that, they can either go to betterdatcircle.com/Conrad, Conrad, and reach out to me, and then I can see if I can help them. And the goal is to grow it worldwide, to get circles in every country. And we are starting slowly. It takes time to build up because dads are behind in saying out loud, hey man, I think I need some support in this. That is one of the things we could become better at. But that's also why that men are the ones with the high suicide rates later in life. It's why men are the one being most depressed later in life. It's why being alone and feeling there's no one for you is the hardest for men. It is because we are not good at sharing. We are not good in saying we need someone else. And I want to be part of my little puzzle. I want to be a little puzzle that takes part in changing this. It is time.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
want to be respectful of your time because I know you have other things to do
Yeah.
after this. And so this has been great. You have your website is jesperconrad.com. I will put links to all of these other
Yeah.
projects. We have
And
AI.
just to say that, Pedro, if people want to know more about how I can help with marketing, then I give
Yes.
like a 30-minute free discovery call. People are more than welcome to contact me and book a talk. And then we see if there's a match, and if they need someone like me, or they just need a pat on the shoulder and saying, hey man, I believe you should just go ahead. Don't use money on this.
No, it's amazing. Yeah. And seeing you guys, like it was such a chance encounter, but
It was good.
yeah, like when I met you, and then what you mentioned to me, just little things. I've seen this from my own perspective. Like, oh, take a look at this thing. Basically, it helped me create like my company in the US, and literally freed me and my wife from being having to come back to Canada, which we were not very keen on, and now we absolutely do not consider, unless it is to visit, then sure, but or to do projects there. But what just that little recommendation you did already unlocked a lot of things for us, so I have to thank you for that. Yeah, you and your wife. And yeah, so that's amazing. So with that, until next time, this has been Wanderings Podcast, and you guys are amazing. Jesper, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my friend.